Welcome to another Digital Thinking from Tortoise. My name is Liz Moseley and I'm going to look after us this evening, I hope. And it's a rather special and unusual thinking this evening, part of our Unheard Voices series. And we're joined by a smorgasbord, you might say, of key workers who have been slogging away throughout the whole of the lockdown period, while the rest of us have been at home, perhaps on furlough, perhaps working from home in endless Zoom meetings, doing our best, looking after the kids, trying to keep the home fires burning. And we wanted to take the opportunity today, this evening, to talk to them in person. They've obviously all knackered and busy, and they're making time for us today to tell us how they're doing, what's going on, how they feel about it, what they think is going to happen next or what should happen next, and the kinds of stories that they would like for us at Tortoise to look into more deeply. And it's also an opportunity for us to kind of collectively say thank you to them too. As always, there is chat if you want to make a point or join in the conversation. My colleague Ellie Jacobs will be moderating the chat this evening. If you haven't done a digital thinking before, if you're on a laptop, look at the bottom of your screen and find a little button that says participants. If you click it, you can see a little grey button that's called raise hand. If you'd like to join in, put your little blue hand up and I'll try and find time to come to you. We do have lots and lots of people that we've invited to come along this evening. People who work in education, people who work in the postal delivery service, in funerals, in nursing, in a food bank, a bus driver, all the people that are really keeping the show on the road. So, and there's a lot of people that I do want to talk to, but by all means, if you want to make a point or join in, then put your little blue hand up. And if we have time, I'd very much like to hear from everybody who's here. So with all that said, it feels to me that an appropriate place to start is with Jennifer Cross, who is an ICU nurse in Blackburn and has had a couple of days off, so she's not as knackered as she perhaps was if we'd been having this conversation a while ago. But Jen, how long have you been nursing for? Let's start with a bit about you.
5 years, but I was a healthcare for 8 before that.
Okay, and what are the things that you feel from your experience of working through the lockdown? How confident do you feel as a nurse that you have the support and equipment that you need to do your job?
Well, like you said, I'm working in ICU now, but I'm not an ICU nurse.
Right.
I work in theatres. Before that, I worked on wards.
Yeah.
So for me personally, going on to ICU and helping them staff, I have got a bit of background experience with ward care, but obviously not with entered patients. Right. We've not really had any proper training. Right. We're just going on helping out, but then I've been given patients to look after. But they've been really good on ICU, and the ICU staff have really supported me and been with me through it all, and they're basically showing us on the job. So I find it a bit difficult, obviously, for them to explain everything. There are some nurses that are like ODPs, they're operation department practitioners, and they've never worked on wards before because they're just based in theatre. Okay. And some registered nurses that have always worked in theatre. So for them, I feel it's really difficult because they've never done that before, even giving a patient a wash. That's all new. And obviously with ICUs, there's a lot of lines. You've got to be really careful with all the equipment.
How many beds in your ICU department that you're in now, Blackburn?
Usually before this there was 20, and they've opened up, I think, 54.
Wow.
They've moved it back now, but I haven't seen when, because I've not been in work for a few days, but they turned theatre recovery into an ICU ward. Right. And then when I was last on shift, we moved the patients from there up to another ward.
Right.
So it's been a lot of moving around.
Have you
and
got
things.
Have you got the kit that you need? We've heard a lot about PPE and what have you.
Yes, mainly as well because staff have gone out themselves, bought their own. We've had a few colleagues buy lots of
PPE. Where do you go to buy it?
They just went to like Screwfix DIY stores to get, do you know, the goggles.
Oh yeah, like a welding mask type thing.
Well, just like the goggles things, yeah. And one of our colleagues knows someone that works in a DIY shop, so they sent loads of visors in for us, which was really nice.
Right.
So yeah.
And how are you coping? So when you got moved into ICU, presumably you weren't the only one. There were colleagues of yours.
We're doing it like every day. You don't know where you're going to work, which I find difficult because one day I'll be in ICU, the next I'll be in theatre, because we still have cancer theatres running,
right.
Emergency theatres and trauma. So I could go in one day, I'm on COVID ICU, and then the next I'm in theatre. So it is difficult. Like I did suggest to the matrons to maybe have groups where you go and work in that area for a few days as well, because the staff are teaching us on the job. One day I worked in non-COVID ICU beds in theatre, and they were teaching me and my colleagues, but the next day we weren't in there. So they might have had to do that process all over again with different staff. So they were shouting out, do you know how, can you do this? We're like, no. So it showed like on them, it's putting a lot of pressure on them because they're trying to show us and do their job.
Have you, this is a horrible question to ask, so I'm sorry for asking it. Have colleagues of yours contracted the virus? Are people?
Yes. We had a nurse right at the beginning. She tested negative twice. Right. I think she was in her 40s. She did have some surgery prior to this, so I don't know everything, but her symptoms were COVID. They thought she had COVID, but she tested negative. Part of the reasons, because I've heard it a lot, patients are testing negative on swabs, but positive on sputum. We've also had another colleague who is gone home now, so that's good. He was on ICU, he was entered. And I think in our area, I think there's about 3 more. But I do know I've got a friend that works in another part of the hospital, and I think she said there's about 7 staff been sent home with positive results.
Right. And how are you doing generally?
Me personally, I'm fine. I think because of my past experience, it helps. I know a lot of people are nervous and anxious. The hardest thing is not knowing, mainly at the beginning, not knowing what we're doing, if we are being safe, if this is what we're meant to be doing, because the guidance were changing all the time. And no one really knew what to do, what do we wear. Like I work in ENT Max Fax, so we was told by our consultants that we had to wear their FFP3, the proper masks that were tested for all surgery, because it's a high risk operations. But our managers weren't sure. We were told to wear normal masks only if there's drilling, so it was really difficult whether we were putting ourselves or the patients at risk at first, because we didn't know whether we were carrying it. So it was just difficult. And then they were saying we haven't got enough masks, so you need to use them like only when, like sparingly. So it was really difficult to work that out.
If you were going to, so we had a bit of a, not a heated debate at all, a mild disagreement in our editorial meeting this morning in Tortoise about whether or not now is the time to engage controlled and forensic anger directed at the government for the situation in which we find ourselves. I'd be interested to know what you think about that.
I think everyone's got a part to play, but like my husband's pretty good with this stuff, and he said, like the government said, lack of PPE. The managers in the hospitals, it's their job to order it, not the government. They supply the money. Your nursing homes and things are saying they haven't got it, but many of them are private, so they should be like providing their own and sorting it out themselves, not relying on the government. So I do think a lot of it is the government and managers in the NHS need to work more together rather than blaming each other.
Right.
I feel that that's what's just happening all the time. Well, the NHS need to do this, government need to do that, and no one's taking, I think, full responsibility and saying, right, well, you do this, we'll do that. There's like, seems to be no set guidance, really.
How are you feeling about what's going to happen next, Jen?
Well, when I left work last week, they moved, as I said, the COVID patients ICU that we're treating out of theatre to open up 2 more theatres for cancer patients, which, yes, they need doing, but I personally think it's too soon. They'll be bringing vulnerable patients into hospital where they're likely to contract the disease, and I just think they could have maybe sent them to Burnley, set up over there for the patients that need operating on, and keep the hospital separate with COVID, non-COVID.
Yeah.
I just think they're maybe too soon in trying to get things back to normal, and we might see more patients coming in at a later date, but that's just my view.
Yeah.
I feel everything happened really quick. We
Yeah.
spent a lot of time getting everything ready for patients coming in, and then they've just now taken it all away because we're okay, and I just don't think it's
not sure
enough time
thought through. Okay, thanks so much, and thank you so much for making the time to be here. When are you next back at work?
Friday night.
Through the night?
Yeah.
Well,
I ain't done nights for a while.
We'll be thinking of you, Jen. And
yeah, thank you.
Obviously, thank you for this, but also thank you in general for it all. It's an extraordinary thing, and just super brave. And nurses, I mean, I sort of always knew, we always knew nurses were tough, but my God, what a job. So thank you very much. I'm going to go to Mo bus driver is his official title, because in true bus driver style, he has to go at 7 o'clock. Mo, are you there?
Yeah, I'm all right. I'm there. Can you hear me?
Mo. How are you doing? Thanks so much for being here. How long have you been a bus driver?
I've been a bus driver for 12 years.
You're an experienced bus driver. Where do you drive a bus? What number do you do?
South London in Vauxhall. So you probably Walworth, around Walworth. So the main routes I'm driving is like C10s, single decker around Bermondsey. I drive the, should I say, 415. That's passing for Elephant and Castle. Yeah, South London.
And you're still driving buses now?
Just last Thursday, I've just been furloughed because of my medical conditions that I have.
Okay.
But I've been working since the lockdown, and it's been really hectic. As you probably might have heard, that we've lost now 33 transport workers in London. And this is a really tragic, sad, devastating news.
Horrible.
Us and the family members. It's devastating news.
How have you been wearing PPE, given PPE?
No, we haven't got any PPE. We've got no masks. We've got no PPE. This has been an ongoing issue that obviously the mayor's relying on the government advice to change. And if the government advice changes, then he's saying that he will source it. Our argument is that employers should give it. We had some major improvements from the back of our collective action as workers. Me and my colleagues, we started to do a lot of things, which resulted in a lot the employers to concede and endorse some of the stuffs. For example, like in the beginning, when there was not that many transport deaths, we were demanding sanitizers that kept on running out. We didn't even have any. We eventually got them, but it was too late. We got gloves. In the beginning, they were saying the gloves are not good to use. You should be regularly washing your hands.
Yeah.
Eventually, we got gloves and guidance on how to use gloves, and you should dispose it every single time we used it. We were fearful, like when passengers are coming through the bus.
Yeah.
So we're feeling like so scared and anxiety, like if passenger comes in, and we did have hear reports that we had driver being spat at because the driver was running late.
Right.
And forth. So we like that news went so fast, and so we did like started to use cling film to cover the speaker holds on the
Yeah.
camera, and then like some of us even used sellotape because we didn't have cling film or something. And obviously like employers knew that this is what we're doing, and then we got them to fit a professionally fitted like a plastic screen on top of the speaker holes, blocking the speaker holes.
Yeah.
But even that wasn't enough because we had like drunk passengers coming on at night, shouting and screaming, and then we thought that if that and there was a bit of pollen as well, so passengers were sneezing.
Yeah.
So what we were doing was we were sealing off the back nearest seats ourselves, even though the employer were like saying, "Oh, don't do this," and they put notice out for disciplinary action. We didn't care because we thought our life matters, and the fact that we're coming to work is enough. So we did take like our own decisions to do certain things, like seal off the back two seats ourselves.
Is your employer Transport for London? Is that who employs you?
We've got like 18 different bus companies, private companies.
Right.
And the one that contracts out the routes to the private companies.
Right. Okay.
I can't mention my employer here.
Yeah, that's fine. I understand. Okay. It's sort of, there's a slight echo, and I can see some comments in the chat between what you were saying and a little bit reading between the lines of what Jen was saying too, which is there's the people doing the work. There's you and your colleagues driving the bus. There's Jen and her colleagues working in theatre and in wards, various different types, who feel that in your case, we need PPE, we need to keep the seats that are near us clear of passengers. In Jen's case, we're not ready yet to be bringing non-COVID patients back into theatre. And then there's a sort of standoff almost between a layer of management and government that is not acting on that feeling. Does that ring true to you too?
Yeah, it does. Like for example, we managed to seal the front doors so that passengers don't even come in through them. I don't know if you know. In London,
you go in the middle now if you've got a middle.
Now.
Yeah.
But that was so hard to get because they were concerned about revenue before our health.
Because of the way you touch your Oyster card or something?
When you come in the front of the bus in London buses, you have to touch your Oyster card by the drivers, and the machine is there. So we said, well, move the machine at the back. And they haven't done that, but that was the logistics of moving the ticket machine at the back was not.
Yeah.
So they were waiting on that. We said, well, we don't care about the ticket machine. We don't care about revenue. We want to close off the front door, and it's practical to use the back door, keep the passengers away from us. Eventually, I think it's now been 2 weeks that we've managed to get that rolled across London. They were trialing it in one of the bus depots. We do like, I do like work with cleaners, and they don't have PPE either. Right. So I can see the differences, like of the workers within the workforce, that the PPE we don't have, and masks. I mean, I tried to even order one from Amazon, and it took so long for it to get one. I think generally, like a bus driver in London got some protection, but the bus drivers outside London, they still have to deal with cash. They've only got one door on the front. They only got one door on the front of the buses, majority outside London, so they can't avoid the passengers. So they're still facing up with the encounters. And sometimes, like from my depot, I have to take over a bus about 10 minutes away. I have to use a bus, so I have to face up with passengers. Sometimes crowded now because they're getting on like more number of people are getting on the buses now because there's a free bus. They don't have to pay anymore.
Buses, just let me quick. The buses are busy.
They are now busier, yeah, because of
they're free.
The number of passengers boarding is increased now, because it's free now, the buses. So obviously we are getting, not in all areas.
Is that since the middle door thing happened that it's busier?
The middle door we're using now, yeah.
Yeah.
So the passengers, so in the Boris buses, the one with the 3 doors, they get in from the middle door and they come out from the back door.
Right.
Because there's 3 doors.
Yes.
And the double deckers, like which is a front door and the middle door. So they only get through the middle door now. But that was like a massive campaign. Like we were like doing it ourselves, and courageous acts. Like I've had colleagues that would never ever do these kind of things, seal off the front doors themselves, and because these were going out.
Now, how do you feel if you can imagine? It's hard for any of us to imagine, but if you can imagine a life after the lockdown has ended, or at least been eased, when life is a bit more normal. It might not ever be actually normal, but a bit more normal.
I
Do
think.
you feel differently? Do you feel differently about being a bus driver now, having had this experience with management?
Thank you. Now I have a lot more passengers saying thank you than I used to do before COVID-19. It wasn't. I think we were like known as the forgotten heroes, and the profile of the bus drivers has been raised. But I'm not sure about like our conditions of work.
Yeah.
If that's going to be the same or not, whether there's going to be an extra cleaning on the buses. Now we have, before we never even have that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if those things are going to continue, like the supply of sanitizers, the supply of soap.
Yeah.
Are they going to continue, because we didn't have these things before?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if things if the lockdown eases, if those kind of things, that the support that we're getting now, I mean, it's a bit too late, but if these things are going to continue, I don't know. I've furloughed now. Like, for example, a lot of the workers were not allowed to furlough because they needed to provide a service. And because lots of drivers fell ill, and lots of drivers had, like myself, have got underlying health issues, we raised the argument that, look, you know, we can't risk ourselves. Our immune systems, and some of us have medical conditions. We need to furlough. And like my wife, she's pregnant and she's due this June. And
That's exciting.
yeah, anxiety. Like, for example, if I come home, I was out all this since the lockdown till I've been working. My mum, who lives with me, and my wife, who lives with me, and my younger sister, they would stay away from me, and I had to sleep in a separate room because they felt that I might pass it over to them. I don't know if I've got the virus.
Can I just check? You just said, I just want to make sure I've understood you correctly, that you've obviously only recently, I think last Thursday you said, started furlough, but it seemed like you had to ask for that because of a health condition. Was there a sort of battle to be allowed to furlough? Did you have a...
They had to like grade the high risk employees and the vulnerable risk. I fell on the vulnerable risk. One, because my wife is pregnant, and two, because I've got a learning difficulty, and it falls under those two categories.
Oh, I see.
And then I had to like persuade us, I want to volunteer, and I want to go and I want to stay out.
Yeah.
In a way, I didn't want to, but I thought it's best because of my wife. She's pregnant.
Yeah, of course.
And I didn't want to. And not only that, they're not even. Some of the times when I was going, I was sitting down sometimes at the bus depot with no job to do because they were running weekend services anyway. So they're better off to keep me at home.
Yeah. Mo, you've got to go off anyway in 6 minutes. It's been really fascinating to talk to you. I'm so sorry you've had such a horrible time.
I wish I could stay as well.
I do. I, for one, always say thank you when I get off a bus, but thank you in addition to all of those previous thank yous, and on behalf of everybody.
To work. Thank you.
It's really lovely to see you, and all the very best to your wife as well when she has her baby in June. That's a nice little silver lining, so have a nice evening. Thank you for being here. Fascinating stories, and definitely some parallels already. I'm going to come, I know that there's some people who have their hands in the air. There's one particular person, a mysterious, identifiable only by a full stop. I know who it is. It's somebody who wants to remain kind of anonymous because they work in a factory producing cleaning products. The double dot full stop mystery person. If perhaps we can come to you next.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Hello. Hi. Thank you very much for joining us, international man of mystery that you are. Tell us a little bit about the story you wanted to share.
All I really wanted to share was that obviously with everything that's going on in the world, things that are cracking off in factories. So there's a couple of issues which are happening. So social distancing, for one, is very, very hard to uphold, especially in factories. So I'm an engineer, so the things that I work on require a lot of manual handling techniques and stuff, and being 2 meters away from someone's very difficult to achieve to do that.
Right.
And we've also had our PPE, which gets delivered to site. Their staff's been furloughed, so it's rather difficult to get PPE at the moment. It's there, but it's not very readily to hand. You have to go through a lot of processes to be able to get it.
So the PPE is delivered to the site, but the people whose job it is to distribute it are on furlough. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, they've been furloughed, yeah.
Ah, okay. And you're, how many people, give us a sense of the scale of it. How big is the factory where you work?
500 odd, probably.
Okay, and it's been open the whole time?
Yeah, so we make essential products, which are vital, I'd probably say, in the combat against coronavirus.
How does it feel to go to work as a key worker that you are, and know that by going to work as a key worker that you aren't going to be able to observe the government guidelines on what is a safe way to live your life?
I'm fine with it. It's something which I expected anyway. No, because you have to work in close quarters with people. But I know that there's a lot of people who aren't. And there's a lot of people who don't respect people's boundaries.
Right.
And it's getting the happy medium between people respecting other people's views and people actually doing as they're meant to, because you can achieve it. It's just in certain areas where you can't.
And does it make for tension in the workplace?
Yeah, it can do. Because only people who need to be there are there, so there's not really a massive managerial presence.
Right. Yeah.
So people are annoyed that there's not many managers about, but where possible, obviously the guidelines are being followed, so they can't be there, and that's irritating people. So it's, to be honest, tensions are high in a way, so people get annoyed at small things, and I think getting people to understand both sides of the story is important.
Yeah. What would you like to happen that is different? You say you're fairly relaxed about your own situation and managing that, but tensions are high, the managers aren't there because obviously if they don't have to be there, they stay at home. What should be happening that is different that isn't happening now, do you think, given that you're having to work in an unsafe environment?
I think PPE needs to be easily available. So at the moment you have to go to your shift leader to get it, whereas it used to be put in vending machines, so you just go and scan your card in the vending machine and you get it. Right. So I think PPE needs to be easy to get, and also obviously there's a shortage of masks at the moment, but we still need all this PPE that we had before, so latex gloves, masks, glasses, hearing protection, and obviously with the shortage we still need it regardless to do the job. Yes. And with suffering from shortages, we're struggling to get the supply for it.
I've just noticed my colleague Zav has asked in the chat, if there was a confirmed case, there might have been in the factory with somebody who was tested, I'm guessing people are going off sick if they have symptoms or whatever, what would happen? Would the factory close, or what do you know? Is there a protocol in place that you're aware of?
So at the moment, if you display symptoms, you go off for 2 weeks regardless, and any of the symptoms. So they're understanding in that respect. So if you show any symptom, then you're sent home or you go off for 2 weeks, and then your health is reviewed after that. Right. Okay. So it's difficult. It is very difficult, and obviously it's affecting a lot of people's mentalities. But in the current situation, I don't see how it wouldn't be.
Yeah, indeed. Well, thanks ever so much for sharing your story and your insights about what's going on. There is definitely a theme. Becky Bainbridge has just put a comment in the chat. Does anyone draw the same parallels as me in terms of the officers retreating, leaving the front line to be the cannon fodder? It sort of has a bit of a feeling about that. I'm going to go to Hasina. Hasina Zaman, who is a funeral director, one of London's few female CEOs in the funeral service industry, just because she's been working since the crack of dawn and is exhausted. And I'm very keen to hear from what you are experiencing, Hasina. Obviously, your job is an extraordinary job under normal circumstances, and something that those of us who don't work in the funerals industry, it's hard for us to imagine doing what you do. Just tell us a little bit about how your working life has changed in the last 6 to 7 weeks.
So firstly, I'd say that our work has quadrupled. So from doing, comfortable 8 hours a day with a few afternoons here and there that I could take off to either, have time off or study. There was just like no way. We don't get any really chance to have any breaks. We're just really working through all the time. We're on call all the time, responding to families who've just lost loved ones. We started just in this last 6 weeks or so working within the Muslim community, because some of the Muslim funeral directors had to shut down because they got the virus. So they couldn't fulfill the service, which is the same day service. The Muslims need to be buried same day.
Right.
So then we were like, we would get the call in the night time, and would be like this afternoon, I buried someone's father this afternoon because we just got all the paperwork done. So there's that going on, but so the workload is like I said, is quadrupled. And then one of the other issues that we've been noticing in this whole, when it comes to the virus, so families have been told that their loved ones died from the actual virus. And when you speak to the client, when you speak to the family member and ask them about the actual cause, the underlying cause, or the, what they've been suffering from, it was like, there was no, especially with home deaths or care home deaths, they're called community deaths. So people who die at home or people who die in the care home. So this team would just turn up and say, yeah, just blanket you've died from, it's just a C-19. So that's been really interesting. And it's really interesting also because I think some families see that as like, not right to be, confirmed death from that, when they've not been any, they've not been, for example, they've definitely not been tested, or they just blanket approach. So there's
people who've died at home are being, on their death report certificate, it says that they died from C-19, but there's no proof that was actually what happened.
Yeah. So that's quite harrowing, really. And then there's a response to that, and then a lot of families are saying, they feel really stigmatized because of this, and I think there's a whole sort of stigma thing going on. And because with us as funeral directors, we're all about making sure that the family spend time getting their final rites, last rites, experience, whether it's their washing, dressing, viewing their loved one. So now, like some of the inquiries we get, I say, well, are you taking like COVID-19 people who are dead? And we say, well, yeah, and are we allowed to view? And we just, well, we need to have a conversation about that. So it's like even our inquiries have changed, because I think people are experiencing, there are some maybe funeral directors who are not accepting anyone who's died from COVID-19. So, and then even there's some cemeteries who are not accepting people who have died from COVID-19. And I think that's, I just think it's really like it's a real deep sense of discrimination and injustice that's going on. But
I'm absolutely staggered to hear you say that there are cemeteries that aren't accepting the bodies of people who died of coronavirus. That is staggering to me. Why is that?
Well, I think it's because they're going to run out of space, some of these places. You know, they've been inundated with just, you know, because the number of deaths that's been going on. And so the cemeteries and the crematoriums, they're just working so, you know, flat out. So
how big is your business? How many people work with you?
There's about 5 of us, and if we need more people, then we can call people. We're a very small team. We're genuinely a family.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I set up the company 7 years ago because it's what I wanted to do. So, and then there's this whole PMART team. I know this sounds really specialist, but these are things in my life. There's so the PMART team there's a specialist team that I've set up in every single local authority, or I think within or to cover a few local authorities, and it's an acronym that stands for the Pandemic Mortality. I can't remember what the A stands for, but team stands for. And so they are tasked with pronouncing death, organising these big hubs. And so a few weeks ago, I had a call from a charity where somebody died in a care home. He had no family. He's of Egyptian background, and we couldn't find him. We couldn't find him in any of the mortuaries, any of the public mortuaries that he would have gone to, because you do a search for when someone dies in a particular local area. So outside COVID-19, it's quite easy to find somebody. You know, they would go directly to the coroners because it's the coroner's responsibilities. And it took us 4 days to find him.
Wow.
It actually took us, and we just kept calling and calling and calling. And even his social worker, she just kept calling and calling all different funeral directors to find out who's got him, who's doing the funeral. I mean, it was just a total.
Gosh.
I think we were so like relieved, you know, when we actually met each other.
Yeah.
And I spoke to a family member back in Dubai who then gave us the authority to go ahead and carry out the funeral service. And then also, I'm just sort of quickly firing through some of the issues. And then there's also limitations of how many people can attend the service. Although the government has said there's only 10 people can attend. So again, each different cemetery, you know, they've decided to interpret that themselves. So some people say 5, and they are super strict about it. And we have to send them all this information, like car registration number. I had to do that with one place, and they are so strict. They just will not. I mean, they've got security on the gates. They will not just let you in. And then some other cemeteries, like I did a baby funeral this morning.
Oh gosh.
And there was nothing. I mean, you could have had 100 people. You know, you've got no idea. And then I ended up the day with doing a Muslim service, and they said 10, and I couldn't see how many was in the car, and there was like 20. But you know, at the end of the day, the cemetery manager didn't stop anybody because it's someone's dad who's died, and they all had PPE on. You know, they're all very organized, and because they're all from one big family, they didn't really have to do the whole social distancing, but they were very, very, you know, aware of the situation, and super respectful, and very, very thankful, and really grateful. And that's what I found. You know, we're just doing our job, and people just saying that, you know, we can't think of any other words like thanking us isn't enough. And it really makes me sad when I hear that, because I really feel for them. You know, I feel their pain, that, you know, they're going through their pain, but they feel like, you know, I've lost my so and so, but you know, I can't tell you what we're going through, because it's just so fast. The whole thing's happening so fast.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for staying with us. I know you're exhausted. You probably want to go have dinner and lie down in the dark room just to chill out.
Well, I've been fasting, and I have only got like an hour to go, and I just really want to get through it. So yeah, I just want to say thanks to everybody, and thank you to all your fantastic work, everybody out there. Sorry I can't stay on, but I have just tried to stay awake for this.
Thank you so much, and for everything, and good luck with
all right.
the 2 weeks.
Brilliant. Okay.
Dina,
and you, everyone, all the best. Thank you.
What an extraordinary experience she is having. I was slightly flawed. I'm flawed. This idea that there's a stigma attached to people who are dying of COVID-19 that is materializing in not just whether or not your family can attend your funeral, but that people are being assigned that type of death that hasn't been tested, and then that might mean you can't be buried or cremated where you wanted to be. It's blown my mind. A slightly different change of pace is I'm going to go now to actually my friend, full disclosure, he's my friend Peter, who has been whose job has completely changed actually since the coronavirus happened. It's also, his beard has completely changed since yesterday. I had a social Zoom call yesterday evening when she had a spectacular beard, but he's trimmed it for this evening, so we're missing the beard. But Peter, tell me where you what your real job is and what you have been doing.
So my job has changed actually last week as a part of a restructure. So I was going into the crisis the head of policy governance for the Royal Mail, and I'll emerge at the other end, a compliance manager. So I've been doing that job at the same time as covering for a postal worker in the West Kensington delivery office.
Wow.
This is a gentleman who has a number of health issues, has had a double heart bypass, and his job is to take in packages that have had failed delivery, or if they've got customs charges to pay. So whenever you take the red card to the delivery office, he's the chap who gives you your parcel.
Okay.
So I'm covering for him, and I have a colleague in the office as well who does that for the West States.
He's on furlough, this dude, or he's
on furlough, yeah. So because it's just not safe for him to be in the office for obvious reasons. And the Royal Mail is doing what it can. There are a number of update calls from the management for people of my level, the management team. Some more communications going out to the other employees as well. Social distancing rules have been put in place, but they're not really enforceable because of the way that these delivery offices are set up. You know, this is a building where, you know, it was never constructed with any kind of idea that this might ever happen. So Michael, who does the same job for the West State, and I are just passing each other all the time. Is that there's no way there's 2 meters between us. I'm volunteering to do that on the basis that I live alone and I can walk to that delivery office from here. So the risk that I am receiving from that is kind of lesser the risk posed. So it just feels like if someone's got to do this job, someone in my position is probably less at risk or less of a risk to others, if you see what I mean. So, yeah. I mean, Mo was talking about his wife and her pregnancy and things like that. So I don't have those issues. So I don't have to worry about that. Yeah. So
how have you found it? Being, I mean, the parcel, when the parcel man or woman comes to my door, it's literally the highlight of my week. So exciting when you get a delivery, even if it's something really boring, it's brilliant. But is it really, really busy? Is it, I mean, it's a completely different world from what you're used to, right?
Yeah, it is. So at the moment, my days are very long, so I have to be in the delivery office at 7 a.m. That's when it opens to the public, and I then work through until 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock, and then I come home and then spend 4 or 5 hours doing my normal job. Wow. So that makes it very long and quite tiring. In the last 2 weeks, it's been easier because the hours have changed. Right. They're now only having the collections office open from 7 a.m. till 9 a.m. for people, which gives us a lot of time to kind of organise. Effectively, what's happened is this kind of volunteering activity for management happens every Christmas to support the business. And at Christmas, we also recruit a hell of a lot of casual workers, part-time workers, that thing. We currently have between a third and half of the existing Royal Mail workforce actually able to go to their jobs, and we're having parcel volumes that are significantly higher than those we have at Christmas. So it's really, really, really challenging across the business at the moment for obvious reasons, and a number of things have been put in place to try and deal with that. But yeah, it's very, very busy, and members of the public are not happy when you can't find their parcels immediately. Although I have to say, there's been a real shift actually. In the first couple of weeks that I was volunteering there, people were very, very, very annoyed with us because we're
really?
because we're the people who were there and you've gone all the way to the delivery office, which is miles from where you live, and you scan the red card. If you have to say for whatever reason, oh sorry, it's not here, which is a mistake. The reason you've been given the red card is your postie is trying to deliver it, and it says on the red card, well, come and get it at this office. So if it's not there, they're annoying. But now people are just a lot more kind of oh, thanks for being open, oh, I really needed this, thanks for doing that. So yeah, it's an interesting shift in attitude.
I bet. I'm conscious time's racing on, and I really want to be able to talk to Hannah in a second, but I just wanted to, there's two things that I wanted to check in with you, Peter, about. One from the notes that you sent me before this, which talks to something we were saying before with Jen and with Mo, which is you normally work in head office, but for all these reasons you've been sent onto the factory floor, if you like, and for your job in compliance, that's massively helpful, because your job is to make sure people can do what they need to do safely and whatever else. And if you only sit in the office, you don't necessarily know the sort of rhythms of working in a parcel depot or whatever, and that is arguably missing a bit from some of the other sort of decision-making frameworks that are happening and affecting the flow of PPE from the factory delivery part out onto the people that need it. And when we were talking to the anonymous contributor, same with what Jen was saying about the timing of reopening the non-COVID patients back into surgery. Is it, but you said that the Royal Mail does this at Christmas anyway for volunteering. So how much, to what extent do you think that the uniqueness of the enforced volunteering, that you've kind of, the Royal Mail's had to kind of crowdsource everybody who's in a office job onto the sort of front line, do you think it will change the organisation for the better?
I wish I could say yes, but I don't think it will. And the reason for that is I have no idea how many people in jobs like mine are doing this, and I don't think it's very many. I think there's a lot of window dressing around it. I think it's largely seen as a sort of PR exercise. Certainly no one that I know of, apart from me, is doing this. They're all doing their normal jobs, working from home. And, it's not enforced, and it is voluntary, and they may have very good reasons for that. Some people that I manage definitely have very good reasons for that because of their health issues. But I'm not seeing senior leadership going and seeing what ordinary people's lives are like as well. And last night, the Royal Mail announced changes that it sought permission from Ofcom. So Ofcom is the regulator. Ofcom sets certain standards for delivery times and fines the Royal Mail if standards dip below. So if there are lots of lost parcels or lots of delays, Ofcom pays a fine. And obviously that's understandably been relaxed. And last night, the Royal Mail announced that it's a temporary suspension of Saturday deliveries of letters, which is, I think a sensible temporary measure, but they haven't talked to the union about that. They're currently in dispute with the union. People are very worried about their jobs in the long term. And I think, when Mo was talking about...
it's Trojan horse, kind of doing
I think when Mo was talking about his employer prioritising the collection of revenue at the Oyster touch points from protecting drivers from the public, that's very, very similar, actually, within the Royal Mail. That this suspension of Saturday delivery is an emergency measure and it's a reasonable one, but is it a Trojan horse for suspending perhaps 10 or 15,000 postmen in a very challenging financial environment? Because that's what you'll do if you make that permanent, which is certainly the aspiration of the business, and that's been an open secret for a very long time.
Thank you, Peter. Fascinating, and thank you to you and everybody who's keeping the whole parcel and mail system going. We've got tons of people still to talk to, and only 10 minutes left. I need to get through everybody. Perhaps I'm going to come to now quickly to where's Darren? Is Darren still on? Darren, who runs the biggest, runs a food bank for the biggest council estate. Hi, Darren.
Hiya.
Tell us about what your work is.
Right, okay. Well, I've run a food bank in Leigh Park, large housing estate. It's within the top 3% of social deprivation in the country. So we're always busy. We are weird key workers because we're not paid for what we do. We're not funded out of love or obligation. I'm a recovering drug addict, so that's why I set up food bank in the first place. So we just got huge. There was me and a couple of my mates, essentially. Now we're a team of 25 and we're working 7 days a week. And we cover about 100 houses. There's 2 projects. There's the food bank, which is essential dried goods, and then we've got a lunch bank project, which we rolled out much sooner than we wanted to, which is prepared meals for families that are choosing to isolate, or they're within that shielded bracket and not poor. So there's about 100 households that we're going to for that. So we've really pushed for that. Now we've got no funding at all from anyone, anywhere. It's all done on, I'd like to say charm and wit, but I'm not getting too old for that. I haven't really got that anymore. But it's done on the community supporting us. The frustrating part here, and it's a theme that's running all the way through, we are being referred to by borough councils, county councils, city councils, social prescribers, schools, doctors, churches are coming to us to ask us to support their residents. Which we're doing because we can't not, but we're not getting anything from that. And we've all had to kit ourselves out of PPE. We've had to get lanyards done so everyone feels safe when they're knocking on people's doors, because we go door to door.
You've sourced your own PPE. You've sourced your own PPE.
Yeah, we've had to, because there's just nothing. There's no infrastructure for this at all. Everyone's coming to us for their referral. The government's saying that there's this $1.5 million that we've given, or $1.5 billion that we've given for food for everyone. Now we're getting some of that food given to us because they can't get through to give it back. The guys that are shielded, that are getting these government parcels. So those, and I've talked to people up and down the country. Those systems have fallen apart. They're giving it to the wrong people, essentially. So the people that are really struggling are not getting anything, and the people that are getting things are giving it back to us because they can't get through to the government lines that they're getting it from, that they shouldn't have had it in the first place. They only just wanted a delivery slot from Asda. So they've had to register as needing to be shielded to get that delivery slot from a commercial company. They're getting all this food they don't even need, and it's not going to the people that need it. So it's really frustrating. So all of my time, I'm now a bid writer. That's not what I do. Do you know what I mean? So I'm trying to get this money in so I can protect my team and I can keep the stock coming in so we can feed our community. And I'm getting calls from local councils going, "We just set up our emergency line," and we wondered, guys, this is 6 weeks in. We've dealing with your emergency for that amount of time, and of course they're furloughed on sometimes up to 3-figure salaries. You know what I mean? So it's really frustrating because none of us are paid. Yeah. All coming out of our pockets. So if someone donates us 50 quid because they are lovely people and understand what we do, well then that's 50 quid that isn't going on food, because I've had to make sure that my team have got ID badges. I've made sure that they've got gloves to wear in and out of every visit that they've got, so we're not even being able to buy the food that we need to feed people, so it's really frustrating, really frustrating.
So does your team, just out of interest, does your team qualify for the priority shopping thing? Like if you're an NHS person, you can go into the supermarket.
Well, yeah, yes, we do, but that's taken 5 weeks to get that official letter to say that. So we had to put ourselves at risk, if you like, by going to and from the supermarkets, getting our limited 2 bags of sugar or whatever it was. Toilet rolls was the one when we first started off. That was a nightmare, because we get wrestled to the floor if we were trying to buy more than one, So yeah, that came to us, but after 5 weeks,
it's not quick enough. Darren, it's amazing work that you're doing, and thank you so much. And in 5 weeks, that you'll have helped more people than it took the council to set up their emergency line. They probably had a team of tech people working full time to try and get a phone number set up. Stevie, I'm so sorry you've been sitting there with your little blue hand up for 55 minutes, and we've only got 5 minutes left. So if I can come to you, you might be our last person. I'm so sorry. Stevie, tell us a bit about what you're doing. What's your...
Yeah, of course. So I work for a charity called Young Minds, and I'm a team leader on the Parents Helpline there. And our helpline basically provides sort of advice, support, information to parents and carers who are worried about their child up to the age of 25, so around their mental health, their emotional well-being, and their behaviour. So we're really lucky in the fact that we've been able to operate the helpline remotely from home, thanks to amazing staff and volunteers that we have. But we've definitely seen that the majority of calls have the coronavirus element to them, whether it's the main trigger or just sort of in the background as a factor. And I guess, you know, what's really been highlighted to us is that the pandemic is, you know, so much harder for young people to access the mental health support that they need. And it's really highlighted or, you know, heightened sort of symptoms or made the mental health problems worse. So, you know, that's why it's been so important that we've been able to continue the service, really.
Yeah. And how many of you work at Young Minds, Stevie? How many of you are there?
Yeah, so we have a team of sort of 5 full-time helpline advisors, and then we have around sort of 30 volunteers, but at the moment we've got 15 working for us remotely, which has been absolutely amazing. So we are still quite a small team, but we are, you know, doing our best, answering as many calls as we can. So,
and in terms of the mental health, I don't want to call it a time bomb because it's kind of already gone off really when the services stopped or were reduced. And obviously it's young people in particular that you're talking about in your charity. How do you see this panning out in terms of a change post-pandemic? What will be precipitated by how bad it's got?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, even before the lockdown, we were inundated with calls around, you know, problems with accessing services, you know, waiting lists, so lengthy, people not meeting the criteria for the help and support that they desperately need. So we know that that's going to, you know, definitely worsen, and we're sort of trying to figure out what that's going to look like and what we can advise people to do. You know, how are they going to find the support that they need after that, you know, we start returning, you know, a bit more to normality. But we are really thinking about, you know, the impact that going back to school is going to have. A lot of people have missed their exams. A lot of people are going to make those difficult transitions between sort of primary and secondary school. And it's going to be hard to get back into the routine and sort of school life. We also know that, you know, anxiety is a huge topic area for us. And, you know, trying to get people to ease out of lockdown, going out of the house, you know, meeting people, socialising, having, you know, contact, that's going to be a huge source of anxiety. So it's how people sort of, you know, adjust to that way of living. And also, you know, we've taking lots of calls around sort of low mood because people haven't got maybe that support network around them at the moment. And, you know, there's the loss of sort of friends and family through the virus, but also that uncertainty about, you know, what's going to happen in the future. Is life going to return back to normal? What's going to happen with people's jobs and education? So, you know, we're trying to prepare best we can and looking forward now to what content and sort of advice we need to be thinking about when we move out of this.
I think there's this huge amount of anxiety associated with the transition back into whatever normal might look like. And I know there's been chat again this evening with Naomi talking about being in college and missing her exams and how that all feels. So it's something that's come up time and time again. I'm so sorry to Hannah Love, who's dutifully waited through the entire ThinkIn, and now we've run out of time. And Hannah is teaches GCSE and A-levels to children with special needs. Of course, special needs kids, a lot of them have continued to go to school even though things have been closed. So maybe, Hannah, we can reschedule another time to hear your stories, because I think this is a series that obviously still has legs in it. There are things and experiences that are changing. I can see Victor, who's just this second popped in at the top of my screen, who is another ICU nurse like Jen was at the beginning. Hi Victor wave. And we haven't had time to come and hear from you either, and I'd love to hear your stories. It's been incredibly moving, and I mean, maybe we all go out with our pots and pans on a Thursday night at 8 o'clock and bang and say thank you. It feels woefully insufficient, really, to express the kind of gratitude and amazement really at what people are doing day by day. Mo in particular was very movingly. If you sign up to be a nurse, your expectation is, particularly if you're going to work in trauma or whatever, that you're going to be confronted daily with some really difficult and upsetting situations. If you sign up to be a bus driver, that's not really the deal. The same with signing up to be somebody involved in delivering the post, as Peter has volunteered to do. 33 bus drivers lost in London is just absolutely staggering. And I do like the idea that Mo described about bus drivers just kind of taking matters into their own hands when they weren't getting the answers they wanted to get from management, and just thinking, well, we're just going to shut the front doors if that's what we think the right thing is to do. I was really struck by the story about the quadrupling of the workload of a small funeral director's business, and this horrible and it's the first I've heard of it, the sense of stigma of people who die from COVID-19 and then can't have the funeral that they want to have or that their family wants to give them, because there's something about that dying of a highly infectious disease that is unpalatable to people, which is hideous to think of, and something I wasn't previously aware of. The statistic Peter shared about how at the moment the Royal Mail is operating on between 1/3 and 50% of its workforce, despite a dramatic increase in the sort of parcel business that's having to deal with. And my personal experience has been staggering. Everybody in my family has a birthday within the space of about 5 weeks of one another, so we've had a lot of parcels being delivered recently, and the fact that stuff keeps on keeping on, to me is, I'm just hugely grateful and impressed, and even more so that it's from people who don't even do that job for a living, who've just volunteered to crack on and go into the depot and get it done, is amazing. There's a sort of more newsy, if you like, story bubbling away underneath it, to do with management decision making now that is reasonable in the context of a lockdown, that arguably might create a sort of lurking problem the other side, as Peter talked about, the reasonable measures about halting Saturday letter deliveries, perhaps creating space for permanent redundancies the other side, because a service has been removed, and the nervousness about relationships between management and unions and things, which I think is something to watch out for. And then just at the end there, the sort of mental health picture and how that's all going to play out. A big thank you to everybody who has joined us this evening, and thank you as always to Jude, who has from Sounddelivery, who is a massive supporter of Tortoise and all of these ThinkIns in general. There she is. Hi Jude. She's been quiet today just because we've had so many amazing contributions from people who are connected to Jude's organisation, and has been a big part of the network. If you haven't, we launched a campaign yesterday to all our existing Tortoise members that they could all donate a Tortoise membership to a key worker that they know. So if you'd like one, please write to me, liz@tortoisemedia.com. Tell me who you are and what key workerness identifies you, and we would be absolutely thrilled to have you participate in our journalism, to hear your stories and represent what you're doing. And on behalf of myself and everybody, clap, and thank you very much. It's been brilliant thinking. I've really enjoyed it. Have a lovely rest of the evening. I'm going to go and have a glass of wine and lie down. I suggest you all do the same. Thank you very much.